Coming live from the studio, this is All Sports with Gerardo. Thank you for watching another episode of All Sports. This is your host Gerardo, and all I talk is sports. On the show today, I am going to talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, and NHL hockey. Before I start the show, I hope you all had a great week. To start off with Major League Baseball, Albert Pujols passed Alex Rodriguez to move into second in all-time RBIs. So right now I'm going to update you with the current schedule for the Rockies. I'm going to tell you every team the Rockies went up against in the last week and the final scores of those games. And I'm also going to tell you who the Rockies go up against in the next week. So to start off, last week the Rockies finished their 4-game interleague matchup against the Astros here at Coors Field in the final 2 games of the series. In the 3rd game of the series, the Rockies lost the game 13-6, and in the final game of the series, the Rockies lost a close game 10-8. So overall, the Rockies were not able to win the series against the Astros. They were not able to win a single game in the series, so the Astros did sweep the Rockies in this 4-game series. This past weekend, the Rockies went against the Dodgers down in Los Angeles to start off their road trip, and they had a 3-game series against the Dodgers. In the first game, the Rockies lost the game 5-1. In the second game, the Rockies lost a close game 4-3, and in the final game of the series, the Rockies lost the game 11-3. So overall, the Rockies were not able to win a single game during this Dodgers series, and the Dodgers were able to sweep the Rockies in this series. So for about the last week, starting off with the Astros and going into the Dodgers, the Rockies were not able to win any of those games. In both series, they got swept, so they were on a losing streak. This past week, the Rockies continued their road trip down to Arizona, and the Rockies have a 4-game series against the Diamondbacks. In the first game, the Rockies won a close game 3-2. In the second game, the Rockies won another close game 5-4, and in the 3rd game of the series, the Rockies won another close game 8-7. And since this is a 4-game series, we're going to have to wait and see if the Rockies can win the final game of the series. But overall, regardless if the Rockies win or lose the final game of the series, the Rockies have won the series, and they got back to winning some baseball games. So we're going to have to wait and see if they can start a winning streak going into this weekend and going into next week. This weekend, the Rockies return back to Coors Field, and they have a 4-game series against the Padres, which will kick off their homestand here at Coors Field. And then next week, the Rockies will have a 2-game series against the Giants here at Coors Field. So that's the current schedule for the Rockies. That's the teams the Rockies went up against in the last week, and that's the final scores of those games. And that's also who the Rockies go up against in the next week. So right now I'm going to update you with the current Major League Baseball standings in the American and National League. To start off in the American League East, right now the Rays are leading this division at 21 games, and the next closest team is the Yankees by 2.5 games, and they're sitting at 16 games. In the American League Central, right now the Twins are leading this division at 20 games, but this is a tight race in this division. Currently, the White Sox and the Indians are sitting at 19 games, and they're only a half a game back from the Twins. In the American League West, right now the Athletics are leading this division at 22 games, And the next closest team is the Astros by 4.5 games, and they're sitting at 17 games. In the National League East, right now the Braves are leading this division at 18 games, and the next closest team is the Marlins, and they're only sitting 2 games back from the Braves. In the National League Central, right now the Cubs are leading this division at 18 games, and the next closest team is the Cardinals, and they're only sitting 2 games back from the Cubs. And in the National League West, right now the Dodgers are leading this division at 22 games, and the next closest team is the Padres by 4 games, and they're sitting at 18 games. So that's the current Major League Baseball standings in the American and National League. In the Major League Baseball power rankings, the current top 10 Major League Baseball teams are the Dodgers, Athletics, Twins, Yankees, Rays, Cubs, Indians, Braves, White Sox, and Padres. Moving on now to NFL football, nose tackle Kenny Clark and the Packers have agreed to a 4-year contract extension. Defensive back Bubba Baker and the Cardinals have agreed to a 4-year contract extension. The Washington football team hired Jason Wright to be their team president. Jason Wright will be the first African American president of an NFL team. The Washington football team has announced Alex Smith has been cleared to resume football activity. Alex Smith broke the tibia and fibula in his right leg during a game in November 2018 when the Redskins went against the Texans. There were fears that Alex Smith could lose his leg or his life because of how severe the injury was. In the last 21 months after enduring life-threatening complications and undergoing 17 surgeries in 9 months because of an infection, this week Washington has cleared Alex Smith to resume football activity, and he is now practicing on the field for the team. So if we take a look at the Alex Smith situation for the Washington football team, it's a miracle. With everything that Alex Smith has went through for almost the last 2 years, that he has been able to recover from these severe injuries and get back to playing on the football field for the Washington football team. With the injuries that Alex Smith suffered back in November 2018 when the team was the Redskins, there was a great chance that Alex Smith would never step onto a football field again and play in the NFL for an NFL team, regardless if it was the Redskins or a different team, with how severe the injury was. But with everything that Alex Smith has went through in the last few months, in the last year and a half, and how he has done everything to recover from these injuries so that he could get back onto the football field, regardless if it's playing for the Redskins, which is now the Washington football team, or for a different NFL team. It's a miracle to see that Alex Smith had the capability and he was determined to do whatever he needed to do on the medical side to recover from these injuries that he suffered. And these injuries that he suffered almost 2 years ago were not just any injuries. They were very severe injuries that could have caused Alex Smith to lose his life and not step onto an NFL football field ever again. The injuries that Alex Smith suffered could have been a career-ending injury because of how severe these injuries were. And with everything that Alex Smith has went through for months now, to be determined to recover and get back to the Alex Smith that he was before November 2018 during that Redskins-Texans game is a miracle, because Alex Smith has the focus and the determination to do whatever he needs to do to get back onto a football field. And the doctors knew, and even Alex Smith knew, that it was at least going to be a year to a 2-year process if he could recover and go through whatever he needs to go through to get back onto a football field. And for almost the last 2 years, Alex Smith has done whatever he needed to do so that he could get back onto a football field. And believe it or not, just in the last few weeks, as training camp has begun for all 32 teams, Alex Smith is now back on the football field practicing for the Washington football team. Now we're going to have to wait and see who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Washington football team, because there are other quarterbacks on the Washington football team roster, which includes Dwayne Haskins, Kyle Allen, and Alex Smith. So we'll have to wait and see who the starting quarterback will be for the Washington football team in the 2020 season. But if Alex Smith gets named the starting quarterback, or at some point plays at the quarterback position for the Washington football team in the 2020 season, it's going to be a miracle to see Alex Smith on an NFL football field. And even now that Alex Smith is on a football field practicing for the Washington football team, that is also a miracle. But if we could see Alex Smith play in a game sometime this season for the Washington football team, that will be a miracle. And there's no doubt that with everything that Alex Smith has went through for almost the last 2 years, it's just a miracle to see Alex Smith almost get back to normal, but now be on the football field, playing football at the quarterback position. And if Alex Smith gets to step on the football field and play in an NFL game this season, there's no doubt that even now with Alex Smith being on the football field practicing, Alex Smith will be named NFL Comeback Player of the Year. There's no doubt, because of everything Alex Smith has went through, but also how he was determined and focused to get back onto the football field. And he can now say that he has went through everything and he is now back on an NFL football field practicing for the Washington football team, and hopefully at some point he will be playing at the quarterback position for the Washington football team sometime this season, regardless if he's a starter or he gets time to be the quarterback for the team. We'll just have to wait and see. But it's a miracle to see Alex Smith back on a football field. Moving on now to NBA basketball, LeBron James passed Tim Duncan to move into second in all-time playoff wins. Only Derek Fisher is in front of LeBron James. LeBron James moved into third in all-time three-pointers made in the playoffs. James Harden moved into eighth in all-time three-pointers made in the playoffs. Luka Doncic's 70 points is the most points scored by any NBA player through their first two playoff games since 1949. Luka Doncic joined Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and Damian Lillard as the only players with 40-plus points and a buzzer beater in a playoff game. Luka Doncic became the youngest player to hit a playoff buzzer beater in NBA history. Luka Doncic joined Charles Barkley and Oscar Robertson as the third player in NBA history to record 40-plus points, 15-plus rebounds, and 10-plus assists in a playoff game. Donovan Mitchell joined Michael Jordan and Allen Iverson as the only players to have multiple 50-point games in a playoff series. Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray are the first opponents to score 50-plus points in a playoff game. Jamal Murray's 50 points is the most points scored by a Nuggets player in the playoffs. Jamal Murray's 9 three-pointers is a career and franchise high. The 76ers fired head coach Brett Brown. The Pacers fired head coach Nate McMillan. The Timberwolves won the first pick in the 2020 NBA Draft Lottery. So here are the 2020 NBA Draft Lottery picks. With the first overall pick in the 2020 NBA Draft, the Timberwolves have the first pick. The Warriors have the second pick. The Hornets have the third pick. The Bulls have the fourth pick. The Cavaliers have the fifth pick. The Hawks have the sixth pick. The Pistons have the seventh pick. The Knicks have the eighth pick. The Wizards have the ninth pick. The Suns have the 10th pick. The Spurs have the 11th pick. The Kings have the 12th pick. The Pelicans have the 13th pick. And the Celtics have the 14th pick. So those are all the teams that have their pick in the 2020 NBA Draft. So right now I'm going to update you with the current schedule for the Nuggets. I'm going to tell you the team the Nuggets went up against in the last week and the final scores of those games. And I'm also going to tell you who the Nuggets go up against in the next week. To start off, in the first round of the NBA playoffs in the Western Conference, the Nuggets are the number 3 seed and the Jazz are the number 6 seed. And the Nuggets lined up going against the Jazz in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. In Game 1 on Monday, August 17th, the Nuggets won the game in overtime 135-125. In Game 2 on Wednesday, August 19th, the Nuggets lost the game to the Jazz 124-105. In Game 3 on Friday, August 21st, the Nuggets lost the game to the Jazz 124-87. In Game 4 on Sunday, August 23rd, the Nuggets lost a close game to the Jazz 129-127. And in Game 5 on Tuesday, August 25th, the Nuggets won the game against the Jazz 117-107. Currently, the Jazz have a 3-2 lead over the Nuggets in this series. And we're going to have to wait and see who wins this series between the Nuggets and the Jazz and who's going to move on to the second round of the NBA playoffs in the Western Conference. Hopefully it's the Nuggets. But right now it's looking like it may be the Jazz just because they have that 3-2 lead over the Nuggets as of right now. So that's the current schedule for the Nuggets. That's the team the Nuggets went up against in the last week, and that's the final scores of those games. And that's also who the Nuggets go up against in the next week. So right now I'm going to update you with the current NBA standings in the Eastern and Western Conference. So if we take a look at the NBA playoffs, to start off in the Eastern Conference, we have the Bucks going against the Magic. Currently, the Bucks have a 3-1 lead over the Magic. We had the Heat go against the Pacers. The Heat won the series 4-0, and the Heat are moving on to the second round of the playoffs, and they're going to have to wait and see if they go against the Bucks or the Magic. We had the Celtics go against the 76ers. the Celtics won the series 4-0, and the Celtics are moving on to the second round of the playoffs. And we had the Raptors go against the Nets. The Raptors won the series 4-0. The Raptors are moving on to the second round of the playoffs, and we will have the Celtics go against the Raptors in the second round of the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. In the Western Conference, we have the Lakers going against the Trailblazers, and right now the Lakers have a 3-1 lead over the Trailblazers. We have the Rockets going against the Thunder, and right now the series is tied at 2. We have the Jazz going against the Nuggets. Right now the Jazz have a 3-2 lead over the Nuggets, and we have the Clippers going against the Mavericks, and the Clippers have a 3-2 lead over the Mavericks right now. So that's the current NBA standings in the Eastern and Western Conference for the NBA playoffs. Moving on now to NHL hockey. So right now I'm going to update you with the current schedule for the Avalanche. I'm going to tell you who the Avalanche went up against in the last week and the final scores of those games, and I'm also going to tell you who the Avalanche go up against in the next week. So if we take a look at the Avalanche schedule, as of right now, the Avalanche did move on to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs in the Western Conference after they defeated Arizona in the first round and they won the series 4-1. So in the second round of the playoffs, we have the Avalanche going against Dallas in Game 1 of the series on Saturday, August 22nd. The Avalanche lost to Dallas 5-3. In Game 2 on Monday, August 24th, the Avalanche lost to Dallas 5-2. And in Game 3 of the series on Wednesday, August 26th, the Avalanche were able to beat Dallas 6-4. So as of right now, Dallas does have a 2-1 lead over the Avalanche. Game 4 will be on Friday, August 28th. Game 5 will be on Sunday, August 30th. Game 6 will be on Monday, August 31st. And Game 7 will be on Wednesday, September 2nd. So as of right now, Dallas has a 2-1 lead over the Avalanche. In Game 3, the Avalanche were able to win the game, so hopefully, as of right now, the Avalanche have bounced back since they have won Game 3, and hopefully, the Avalanche can win Game 4 in some of the next games so they can take the lead in this series over Dallas. And we're going to have to wait and see who wins this series. Hopefully the Avalanche can win this series, because whoever wins this series is moving on to the Western Conference Finals. And whatever team's moving on from the second round has a chance at reaching and winning the Stanley Cup. So we're going to have to wait and see if it's the Avalanche or Dallas. But hopefully it's the Avalanche moving on to the Western Conference Finals. And hopefully they can bounce back and also win Game 4. But also win this series so they can move on to the next round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So that's the current schedule for the Avalanche. That's the team the Avalanche went up against in the last week, and that's the final scores of those games. And that's also who the Avalanche go up against in the next week. So right now I'm going to update you with the current NHL standings in the Eastern and Western Conference. So if we take a look at the Stanley Cup playoffs in the Eastern and Western Conference, to start off in the Eastern Conference, in the first round, we had Philadelphia go against Montreal. Philadelphia was able to win the series 4-2, and Philadelphia moved on to the second round of the playoffs. We had Tampa Bay go against Columbus, and Tampa Bay won the series 4-1. And Tampa Bay is moving on to the second round of the playoffs. We had the New York Islanders go against Washington, and the New York Islanders were able to win the series 4-1, and they're moving on to the second round of the playoffs. We had Boston go against Carolina, and Boston won the series 4-1, and they are moving on to the second round of the playoffs. In the Eastern Conference, in the second round of the playoffs, we will have Philadelphia go against the New York Islanders, and as of right now, the series is tied at 1. And we will have Tampa Bay go against Boston, and as of right now, Tampa Bay is leading the series 2-1. In the Western Conference, in the first round of the playoffs, we had Las Vegas go against Chicago, and Las Vegas won the series 4-1, and Las Vegas is moving on to the second round of the playoffs. We had Colorado go against Arizona. Colorado was able to win the series 4-1, and Colorado is moving on to the second round of the playoffs. We had Dallas go against Calgary. Dallas was able to win the series 4-2, and Dallas is moving on to the second round of the playoffs. We had St. Louis go against Vancouver. Vancouver was able to win the series 4-2, and Vancouver is moving on to the second round of the playoffs. In the second round of the playoffs, we have Las Vegas going against Vancouver, and as of right now, the series is tied at 1. And we have Colorado going against Dallas, and as of right now, Dallas is leading the series 2-1. So that's the current NHL standings in the Eastern and Western Conference. Moving on now to the show, what to watch for this week in sports: the Rockies, Major League Baseball, the NBA playoffs, the Nuggets, NBA basketball, the Stanley Cup playoffs, the Avalanche, NHL hockey, NFL training camp. Moving on now, on the next show, I will talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, and NHL hockey. I hope you all have a great week. Tune in to the next All Sports with Gerardo show next week. I want to say thank you to everybody that listens to All Sports. Subscribe or like my pages on social media at All Sports with Gerardo. Until next time, this is Gerardo.